Hello and welcome back to season 3 of How We Live Online. I'm so excited that we're doing it. I'm Christina and this is Self Seekers, the 3rd season of How We Live Online. I can't believe we're already on season 3. I'm so happy about it. I'm feeling refreshed after our break. And this season is all about social media and the self. We're going to talk about Instagram and insecurity. We're going to talk about beauty. We're going to talk about health and so much more. This is our first episode of the season where Joanna is going to break down the Quantified self movement. This episode is for the Apple Watch people. This episode is for the bullet journal people, the people who count their steps, log their sleep, and track their moods. I'm not one of those people, but Joanna is, and it was really fun to talk about. So please enjoy the episode, and yeah, get ready for season 3. We're going to be a little more personal, a little more vulnerable, and I am so happy to share it with you guys. So yeah, talk soon. Hello, and welcome back to How We Live Online. I'm Christina.
I'm still Joanna.
Still?
Yeah,
Thank
I don't
God.
know.
No
It's so
rebranding on
long.
the names.
Yeah, no. I guess I could have a new nickname.
Yeah,
Anyone
Jay. I hate that.
could.
Like a little.
Yikes.
Not hate,
Yeah.
but it just is like Jay to me. But you're Joanna.
I've always wanted more people to call me Josie. Or if
That's
I
a
had a
cute
kid,
name.
I know, or if I had a kid that would like inherit some variation of my name,
It would
I
be
would call
Josie.
them Josie.
Do you want to tell the listeners about your name?
That
It's
it's a
not
combo
just,
of two names?
yeah, it's not just Joanna.
Yeah, I could. My sister will get jealous because I feel like that's what I've been hearing about from her so much lately is that like she's just jealous that this is my name and not her name. But shout out to my parents for picking this name. My name is a combo of two names of both my grandmothers, Josephine and Pollyanna. So I am Joanna, and the alternative would be Polyphene.
Polyphene sounds like a scary chemical of some
I don't know
kind.
why that wasn't Nina's name.
Well, I mean, you know what I didn't think of until just this second, which is funny. I feel like I think about the fact that your name is not just Joanna all the time because it's like, because Joanna is a name, is a name, but your Joanna is like Pollyanna Josephine. Anyway, it's so funny that they had a daughter and then they were like, we'll just use both of our mom's names. Like, let's not save one in case we have another daughter. Like,
Yeah,
you could have been Josephine and then Nina could have been Pollyanna.
right.
You know what
Well,
I mean?
Nina's named after my grandma Josephine's best friend, who was
Oh,
Nina, Aunt Nina, but her name was actually Antonina. And I think my mom is a little bit fuzzy on this. I think she either like didn't really realize that until after Nina was named. So Nina's just Nina.
Mhm.
But I love the name Nina and I
I do
love the name
too.
Joanna.
I think they are beautiful names. I also think that this is strangely relevant to our season already.
Hmm.
Social media and the self. What a time. What
Selfie.
selfie? What are we what if we just called the whole thing selfie?
Selfie. Kim K would sue us. Wasn't her book of
Yeah, her
selfies called
book.
Selfie?
Yeah, it's so original. What a trailblazer. She's such a genius. Um, yeah, what are we starting with? Polyphene?
Today, our
That's your
inaugural
nickname. Wait a
topic.
minute. That's your nickname.
What did you say?
Polyphene.
Oh, yeah. It's a little bit more namey than Nikki. I feel like the Nick part is like what makes a nickname short. Does that make any sense?
What do you mean?
Like nickname, name is name, and Nick is like short,
Yeah, because
short
it's like
name.
Nicholas to Nick. That's how I always thought about it.
Yeah. Nickel. We're on the same page. Okay. So today, our first topic, we're going to be diving into personal data. And this idea of N of one experiments which I think is really interesting. But essentially, what we're talking about today is personal data. And the big example we're going to go through is health data. We're talking wearables, fitness
Mm-hmm.
trackers, in
Mm-hmm.
the universe of personal data collection that we live in.
Mm-hmm. And this is especially relevant right now. I mean, it always is, but there's the whole TikTok debate about it possibly being banned overall in the US. And then there's also like certain places. I know college campuses have banned it. And there's this big discussion about personal data in regards to TikTok, and a lot of like other big tech like Meta slash Instagram, Twitter, all of that, they're taking the data in the same way. It's just that they're not a Chinese based or China based or Chinese owned company. So they're not, receiving that kind of feedback about it. And so, yeah, this is something that is, affects our daily lives because so many of us have Apple Watches and carry a phone and all of that, but also it's an active conversation in politics right now. So I'm excited to learn about it from Polyphene today.
Yes. I will say too, I'm the ham, but I think also a little bit like like I think you should be because a lot of the research I did and like my perspective on some of this, like I'll talk about the cons at the end, but a lot of what I'll be talking about isn't like so much pro, but I will be like talking about some benefits or cool aspects of just
Mm-hmm.
having more of your access to your personal data. So I would appreciate also from the listener and from Christina, like we're taking this in context of like I'm going to be saying these things, but just keep in mind, right, that like the discussion, like you just said, Christina, there's like a lot more going on here than what we'll be able to touch on today.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christina,
Joanna.
in some ways, these fitness trackers are just glorified pedometers. When
I
do you think
don't
the
know
pedometer
why. I
was
was like, Joanna,
invented?
you mean speedometer, but no, pedometer.
Pedometer. Yeah,
Yeah.
pedometer.
Mm-hmm.
Ped coming from the Latin feet. So yeah, measuring your footsteps.
Joanna took Latin.
I did take
Latin.
Latin,
We get it.
Latin, and I was like, I didn't even really think about pedometers when I was going in to start researching this. But do you remember like wearing an actual pedometer in gym class?
Give me 1 second. It's gonna end up being like 10, maybe 15, maybe 20.
Okay, my guess is that Christina owns an actual pedometer that she's about to show me. She's going through a bag of cords or something.
I keep I keep like running into this damn ass thing that is somewhere in my, and as soon as I need it, look, I'm not gonna take the time to find it. I you can get like grab bags from Goodwill. There's this grab bag that like you could see into, and there was like I forget even I don't even remember what I wanted in it, but it was like $1 and there's one thing in there that I wanted and everything else was trash. And one of the things in there was a pedometer.
Interesting.
So I do actually have one. And if I had the very specific battery to put in it, then I could use it.
Oh, is it like a watch battery?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm sure like we had, because we had it in middle school. We went to the same middle school, we went to different elementary schools. I remember it also in elementary school, like wearing the pedometer, and then also like, the way that we did reading log, like you had to write down your reading. We also had like step log. So you'd have to like write down how many steps you got every day.
At like in gym class, you did?
Yeah, or as a part of health class. Like, I don't know. It was like,
Oh,
I
no,
definitely
I
had
didn't
to
have to
do
do
that.
that.
And I also did it in middle school. So I'm sure you did it too.
My sister did it. Well, I don't remember doing that in middle school, but I probably did if you did it. And Maddie had to, like during COVID for her gym class credit, like log her steps.
Mm, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if I didn't tell this anecdote, but in elementary school, we would get like little shoe charms for achieving a certain number of steps that like they had a little hole like an eyelet that you could essentially feed through a shoelace and you could
Yeah.
like tie it onto your shoes. I
Ugh.
instead um took like a little piece of yarn and I would like dangle the shoe from the side of my glasses.
Joanna, that is not what I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna be like, my laces were covered.
No, I wore them in like the weirdest way possible. Like
So
I would
you
have,
had a string of yarn tied to your glasses and a little shoe charm like knocking against your chin.
yes, it was like the most distracting thing. Like I don't, that was my fashion statement in
Is
third
there a
grade.
did you wear one in an elementary school picture? Like a picture day picture?
No. There must be a record somewhere, but
Okay. Because I don't know why, like, I was like, oh, I feel like I've seen that, but maybe not.
mm,
Okay.
yes.
You've been special from a young age.
Yeah, you know me. Always a trendsetter.
Beta.
Seta. So the first pedometer was invented in the late 1700s, and then in 1956, Dr. Yoshiro Hatano was inventing his own pedometer, and he is credited with creating this 10,000 steps a day goal. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Mm. So that's
Um,
from the 50s.
yes, so that's from the
Okay.
50s, and it's also like not really based on any research other than um this guy kind of thinking that it was a good idea, like a good number, a round number to achieve um, some level of good health.
Do you know if this doctor was in America?
I'm pretty sure he's Japanese.
His name sounds Japanese. I'm curious if he was like a Japanese doctor in America doing this or if he was in Japan.
I'm pretty sure he was in Japan. His he invented a pedometer too, and it has a Japanese name.
I'm glad that you looked into that because I have never once guessed why it's 10,000 steps a day. I don't even know like if that adds up to a certain amount of miles or like,
Well, it's actually different, depending on how tall you are, how
yeah.
many miles it would take you. But yeah, I think essentially like um so he was an inventor, not like a health scientist.
Hmm.
And I think basically the 10,000 steps was just like a round number to sell the invention. And obviously, like, movement in the day is good for all of us, but does it have to be 10,000 steps? Does it have to be the same for all of us?
Hmm.
Things that we think about now, I'm not sure that like people were really thinking about that back then, but
Of course, it was just some random thing to sell a thing.
yes,
That's how it goes everywhere, all across the globe, all across town, all across the years,
town.
all across town.
So then I'm going to talk about Fitbit. So in 2007, Fitbit comes on the scene um, as a startup and kind of like immediately becomes like very well funded. A lot of people are interested, um, and they become this powerhouse in, um, small wearable devices for essentially like tracking steps, right? Like at the beginning, it's a glorified pedometer.
Hmm.
And
That you wear on your wrist? Has that always been like a wrist thing?
no. So the, and that's kind of interesting too. So in 2009, so Fitbit starts gaining money. Like they come out in 2007 with their ideas. And then in 2009, they officially launch like their first line of products, including the Fitbit Classic, which was a clip-on device.
Hmm.
So it was
Interesting.
designed to
A la the
track,
iPod Shuffle.
right, right. It was designed to track your movement, um, right? And then from that you can understand like information about your sleep and how many calories you burn, but really it's just all boiling down to the movement and your
Okay.
steps, but it's like just if you're moving. Um, and there was also an early, I don't know if you remember this, if you like ever like interacted with one of these, but again, another thing that I didn't think about until I researched this was like in 2010, Nike and iPod collabed to release a fitness tracker that was attached to your shoes.
What?
Yeah, it was like, and I bought a pair of shoes because I had like I just would get Nike sneakers, and one year I bought a pair that had this like I don't remember it. I don't think I ever used it like for the tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think it was like super invasive like part of the shoes, but yeah, it had like some clip in it that tracked you.
I feel
And
like
so I was like,
Apple has so many things like that that just like died, you know what I mean? That just didn't work.
right. Well, I mean, it's interesting because how you said like has it always been a watch, right? It's only more recently that we think about um wearable trackers as like the best ones are a watch.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or even there's rings now. I don't know if you've heard of like
Oh,
Aura Ring.
yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Claudia Salewski, who's a big vlogger. She lives with is partners with in love with Phineas of not Phineas and Ferb, Phineas
Phineas and
of Billie
Ferb.
Eilish, her brother. Um and I remember them like doing a sponsored video like so long ago about those rings. And I was like,
Mm.
these are weird. What the fuck? And I've only like in the past year seen a way more people like be sponsored by them and stuff. But that's like a stylish version and like way more expensive version of like the smart watch, the or not, not in the communication aspect, but in the like personal data tracking thing. It just looks like I think you can get it in like a silver / chromey color and then a gold plated color. Yeah, and that's like for the bougie people who want to do it, I would say, like who are more into it looking pretty. Yeah, I personally like could not, I just like don't like the watch. I don't like watches really. And then the
Hmm.
smartwatch, like if it were able to like be more dainty, I think I would like it. This is just my opinion on what these things look like. But and if I were super rich and I were interested in getting my data like that, I would probably get the Aura ring just
Hmm.
because I like how it looks better. But um okay, yeah.
Yeah, for me and my personal positionality, just
Personal
full
positionality.
disclosure. Yeah, so you can understand my bias. I got a Fitbit for the first time in my senior year of high school. And I've pretty much there have been like some periods where I haven't worn one, like even like within the last year, like there have been a few months where I didn't have any kind of fitness tracker, but for the most part, I've had them and used them pretty consistently since then, but a bunch of different kinds. Um,
I can
and
attest to
yeah,
this. This is true. Joanna
yeah.
got a fitness tracker and then never looked backer.
Well, that's not true because I have not worn them at certain points. Like for most of
Hmm.
last year, I didn't wear one.
Hmm.
Um, and I
Well,
did,
also you got one that kept breaking.
yeah, so that's what we'll get into. I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit later too, that I have an Apple Watch now. I got
Mhm.
one in like November of last year, and I mostly got it because I was pretty loyal to Fitbit. I had like one Garmin, which is like more intense runner kind of tracker. Also, I am serial like eBay shopper for these things, so like most of these things I did not buy new, so maybe that's also why they crapped out on me so quickly. But so yeah, I bought this. I had like one Garmin, but mostly I had Fitbits, and they just kept breaking. Like not even the software, like the hardware, like the bands would break, and it
Yeah.
was just so frustrating. So I switched to Apple Watch, and
You used to
I'll
be
talk
like
about
trying to like put it back together on your wrist like while we're pre-gaming going out. Like it was always like dangling
yes.
somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. This is true. This
So
is,
you're
yeah.
biased because you like these things because you use them. But also you're a good person to much better to talk about it than me because I don't know anything about it.
Right. So, yeah, just that to say that, like, when you say, there's obviously, like, I care and I enjoy having my own personal data to look at more than you do.
Yeah, that's true.
And I like having, sometimes it makes me feel bad these days when I'm not as fast of a runner. But for example, like, I have like a track of every run I've ever taken almost, or like every hike I've ever been on. So if I want to remember like which route I did or the last time I did that, how fast I was, or
Whoa.
anything. If I'm like, oh yeah, like like where did I go that one day on that run that was really pretty? I can like go back and remember that.
Useful.
Yes, but also there's other ways you could do that too. Like you could take like physical notes, right? Or other things. But anyways, this is a good segue into what I will talk about next, which is the quantified self movement. So this is a movement that really dates back to the 1970s, but it's been much more popular now with increased access and a proliferation of these wearable devices. Um, and so Wikipedia defines the quantified self movement as the cultural phenomenon of self tracking with technology and a community of users and makers of self tracking tools who share an interest in self knowledge through numbers.
I love when things have names.
I know.
So satisfying.
Yeah, the quantified self community. It makes me feel better about myself, right? Like I'm a member of this community, but it's
You're a
also
part of the
like this,
movement.
yeah, like it's a movement. You can also think about it as like a sub part of what's called personal science,
Hmm.
right? So it's like this idea of like applying scientific principles to yourself and your personal life. Um, and to get into one of the other major topics of today, quantified self can also be defined as the practice of exploring personally consequential questions by conducting self directed N of one studies using a structured or unstructured empirical approach.
What does that mean?
So, just to give you a little bit more context for what that means, for our purposes today, like when we talk about this N of one study, we'll be talking about like me in my house. Like it's not a very formal, this is more the unstructured N of one
Hmm.
type of study.
Okay.
But just because I think it's interesting, I'll tell you a little bit. Like, this is also something that's becoming more popular in a lot of health science research. And if anyone's interested, I would recommend checking out Christopher Schmid from Brown University. I heard him talk earlier this year, and he's doing a lot of interesting work in this field. So essentially, like when you think about health science research, which is often like drug studies is probably like one of the most tangible things, right?
Hmm.
The gold standard for that research is called a randomized control trial, where the idea is you can control for every factor in an experiment except the experimental variable or your drug, right? Like which what you actually want to be studying, and that is randomly assigned to your group of participants. And so from that, you can use statistics to understand if your if your intervention has a statistically significant effect on your population that you're studying. When we talk about control in a randomized control trial, and when we learn about like doing scientific experiments in school, right? We're talking about like control as in like the same, right? So
Hmm.
like you can control everybody's the same age, everybody's the same gender, right? But in real life, like, and in highly consequential studies like drug studies, there are way too many things. And like, we're not studying twins, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no way we can have actual control which is why the randomization is so important because basically you're assuming that if it's perfectly randomized, statistically, that's the part that controls for it is like the statistics. Like
Okay.
the control is statistical control. It's not like actually being able to say that everything's the same except you got the drug and you didn't. The
Mhm.
random is like the randomization is I'm not looking at who's a man or a woman. I'm just randomly saying you guys get the drug, you guys don't. And
Okay.
because that's random, I can say if it's significant effect or not, controlling for everything else.
Okay.
Okay, so the other thing I want to quickly explain is this N part.
Right.
So what does N of 1 mean? So N usually stands for number,
Oh, I was
which
right.
yes, which is like in an experiment, it's usually your sample size. So if you were running an experiment with 10 people, it would be like N of 10. So another interesting part about these kinds of trials is that like in reality, it's really hard to get a lot of scientific research off the ground because like it's really expensive to run large scale experiments on hundreds of people, which is required for drug development. And so, this idea that you could run an experiment on just one person and have, statistically significant results is really interesting and something that people are exploring in ways that I won't talk about today. Like I said, we're talking about like a lot of personal decisions. We're not really talking about drugs. We're more talking about like behavioral changes that you would
Hmm.
make. So, nothing
Like
that's
people with bullet journals who do mood tracking.
yes, yeah, that's enough. That is quantified self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
but just to say, if you are interested in more of the sciencey parts of this, look up Christopher Schmid. Christopher Schmid. Christopher Schmid. Yeah, look him up. He's at Brown. It's Christopher Schmid. So we're clear. Yes. So just to give a few examples, so we can make this a little more tangible, um,
Hmm.
of work that Christopher Schmid work that
Just
Dr. Schmid
okay.
has done. He so he did some work looking at changes in diet for children with inflammatory bowel disease. Okay, again. Action. Okay. So just to get a little bit more tangible, a few examples of work that Dr. Schmid, one study that he talked about that I thought was really interesting was essentially he had developed like a small app that people use that was basically a calendar to like how you mentioned like a bullet journal tracker. This was
Hmm.
basically an app that people could track their mood, and then he also gave them, it was like over 6 weeks or something, and every 2 weeks you could choose a different intervention you wanted to try to improve your mood.
Hmm.
So that could be like getting more sleep or doing yoga. And they basically built this interface for people to input those data points. And then they used this kind of N of one experimental design and interviews to understand like if people thought that it made a difference or what people like doing. And I think what's really interesting about this is that the point is not to like say like 15 minutes of yoga for everyone will improve your mood
Hmm.
by 15%. Like
Hmm.
I thought it was so interesting how like involved the people were in designing the experiment, right? They had choice over the interventions and
Hmm.
inputting the data. And then at the end, they were really the ones who decided, like, oh, yeah, it did significantly improve my mood and I like doing it. Or they could be like,
Hmm.
I didn't see a significant change, but I still really liked doing it. Like, or
Hmm.
it did change, but honestly, like going on a walk every day when I live in Montana in the winter is like not something that I want to do.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think is really interesting about this idea of personal data collection in the health field is I think it's a big opportunity for people to be more involved in their health decisions and have more control over some of these things.
Yeah.
I will also share my screen with Christina if I can. I'm showing Christina a post from Data is Beautiful subreddit. by the user Hero Journal.
Hmm.
And I just have to tell you, Christina, like, to me, this person is famous. Like, this person is not actually famous, but to me, like, I think about this research all the time. Essentially, what User Hero Journal has done is for 2.5 years, he has tracked his sleep score with different interventions that he's taken. So these include things like, and we'll post this for anyone who wants to see it, but he
Hmm.
tracks things like, did he consume alcohol? Did he engage in high intensity exercise after 12 p.m.? Is he using screens? What time did he go to bed? All that kind of stuff. And then also, after he started tracking, he also started tracking these things for his girlfriend too. So it's like a lot of data on the two of them that they share with the world. And they publish like every 6 months or so, they give an update on the significance of different interventions for each of them, which I also think is really interesting. Like, some of their effects are like completely opposite, which I think again like is really cool about this. Like, N of one is like a very tailored health experience. So, for example, Hero Journal himself, his most significant effect is having basically a cool room, which gives him a 20% increase in his sleep score on average. And for his girlfriend, her most significant effect is fasting 3 hours before bed. So she's not eating right before she goes to bed, and that gives her a 14% increase in better sleep.
Wait, sorry. Can you go back? There's one that I want to highlight.
Yes,
So I
there are
think
some funny things about
there are
this.
some funny things about it. Yeah, so they each have the boyfriend's on his side, shared bed with partner has a negative 19% effect. Bad. And then the girlfriend's second, like most good one is shared bed with partner plus 9%. That's so funny. And
Yeah,
then
it is
I
really
guess they
funny.
started like using separate covers and that has had a positive effect on both of their sleep. Dang.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
she's tracking her menstruation.
Mhm.
Menstruation,
Menstruation.
which has a negative effect.
Hmm.
Yeah, that and like the thing that you were talking about earlier with the 6 week trial, I was just curious about like people who are like on their periods and stuff. Like, I wonder if you would have to start if you're going to continue doing that thing where you change something every 2 weeks. Like, do you have to change that factor again, probably at a different point in your cycle? I feel like that would maybe have an effect. Like, especially with temperature, like if you're
Hmm.
on your period and then you just like want to be warm that week. And so you like so you're tracking like having a warmer room at night. And then it starts to like fuck up your sleep later because you're in a different part of your cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the example I was giving was actually 6 weeks. It might have been like 6 months to account for
Okay.
changes like that. But that's a really good point. And you're thinking like an experimental designer, Christina.
Oh my
So you
God.
definitely would want to take things like that into account.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dang, they've really been logging that every day for like years.
I know. It's like
Wow.
so cool to me. As someone
Wow.
who loves quantified self, like, because then they can really like use that information. And I don't know like how they use it, or if they just like are continuously like running an experiment on themselves for their whole lives.
Well, I mean,
But
obviously they're using it because it looks like the things at the top of their list they've been logging them for longer, so they realize like, oh, this works for me, and then they keep doing it.
yeah,
Damn, they're gonna know like on vacation exactly how to be comfortable.
this is very true.
That's so funny. Like, imagine they're probably like, we can't go camping like unless we have a fan and we have two separate sleeping bags and da da da. Or they just are like, we accept our fate.
Right,
We will
right.
not
Yeah.
sleep well. Or they just know how they'll react to the situation. That's
Right.
really
Yeah,
fun.
because one of them is alcohol, which I feel like a lot of people know alcohol makes them sleep worse. But I mean, the thing that's interesting about quantifying it is I think you can take like your anecdotal information and like some data information together to make a decision about like drinking or not,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, one more than the other, different for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I have a glass of red wine, like a tiny little itsy little bit of red wine before I go to bed, that's fine. If I have a normal glass, not fine.
Hmm.
If I had like 2 beers last night, I slept terribly.
Yeah. I just haven't been enjoying drinking lately after I had COVID, which I'll talk about now.
Great segue.
So, amazingly, during the break, if anyone was wondering what Christina and I were doing, we both had COVID
Separately.
separately. Um, and I will mention a bit about my experience with COVID in relation to my Apple Watch and my wearable device, because I just thought it was really silly. Um, okay, so I have the Apple Watch and like the health app on the phone, right? And then I also have this app called Gentler Streak, which is a pretty cool Apple Watch app. It won an award in 2022 for the best Apple Watch app. And essentially, the philosophy is a gentler kind of exercise streak because a lot of these, like Fitbit has this, Apple Watch has this. Your goals, like when you set your like 10,000 steps a day or you're closing your rings, right? Like those are goals for you every day, when
Mm-hmm.
really that's not a realistic way to have a goal because
Yeah.
things change. You can get injured. You should take rest days. But the way that goals are set up on these apps, they don't acknowledge that. So Gentler Streak kind of sees themselves as an app for people who want to track some, aspects of their fitness, but also take rest days.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things are built in. But it also only takes the same data that my health app takes, right? It's all the same information, just sort of packaged to me differently, which is important in this story. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I had the first night I had a fever with COVID, I obviously knew I had a fever. I didn't need any app to tell me that I did.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at my Gentler Streak app, it said it gives you like a well-being score. And for me, it said, I think something's wrong with you. Like you were, your resting heart rate, your sleeping heart rate was a lot higher. You had really low heart rate variability and had a really high respiratory rate. So I was like, my heart was working really overtime in the night when I had a fever and I was breathing really hard, which makes a lot of sense. And everything was like significantly, it wasn't only high, it was like significantly out of my normal ranges.
Mm-hmm.
So the app told me to not do anything. The app was like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to take a break because
Mm-hmm.
you are probably sick. My health app that knows all the same information did not tell me anything. It did not say anything the whole time I had COVID. Um, the Gentler Streak app, every time I had a fever, told me the next day, like, something's probably wrong with you, like, you need to rest. The first thing I heard from my health app was after 5 days of having COVID, I got a notification saying I had been walking less in the past 5 days. It was like, you've been moving a lot less. And I was like, no shit. Like, honestly, so crazy. And even still, like, I've been getting different things like, I've had an increase in my average resting heart rate and my walking heart rate, not immediately after I had COVID, but like within the past 3 weeks. So pretty soon after I've had COVID, those things have been higher,
Mm-hmm.
which freaked me out at first. But when I Google it, those are pretty normal things to experience after having COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But this Apple Health is not providing any context or like adjusting its expectations, even though it knows I was sick. Like, it never told me I was sick in the same way that the Gentler Streak did, but it has all the information to tell somebody that they're sick and like to sort of like, if I was able to input, like, yes, I had COVID, it could very well, like, wrap this kind of like, oh, you've been walking a lot less, but it's fine because you have COVID, right? It could like easily wrap
Mm-hmm.
that notification in some nice words for me, but it just
Yeah.
doesn't.
So the health app, if you had just had the health app on your phone, it does take your, like, it knows about your breathing and your heart rate and stuff, right? Like just the
Yes.
health app does. Okay. So it's not like they're logging different information. They do have the same exact information.
Yeah. Everything on the gentler streak comes from my Apple Watch.
You have it on your phone, but it takes the data from your watch.
Yeah.
Basically, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Mhm.
That's so weird. I
They're
feel like
just
it's kind of
designed,
obsessed with like the exercise part. And for
it is like,
mine, I always get headphone notifications
yeah, yeah.
because I always have it like just on my car speaker, which I have loud, but it thinks
Mhm.
that I'm have Bluetooth headphones on when I put it on my
Oh, true.
car. Because I have like a Bluetooth insert in my car. It's not like linked to my car. It doesn't say CarPlay.
Mhm.
So it thinks that I'm like blasting music into my ears, which sometimes I am like on my actual headphones. But yeah, that's the one that I get the most, I think, from my health app is like, you need to turn that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like it is so interesting how it's like it is the same data, but just like you said, it's like completely different goals of how they're packaging that data for the user, and it completely changes like what they do and don't show in a way that I think is important for people, especially people, right, who, I mean, one thing I didn't really research, but we can talk about anecdotally, right? One thing that comes from having all of your personal data accessible to you is you can get obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can really try to micromanage in ways that are unhealthy every aspect of your life. And for Apple Health to encourage those behaviors, they're not doing anything to discourage them. So in that way, they are encouraging them. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
an app like Gentler Streak, um, I think it could be better, but it is like one step towards a platform that says, you need a rest day because you didn't get a great sleep. And then it also tells you you need a rest day if you're over exercising.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, like can you log? I just don't know anything about because I don't use these apps. Can you log like the vitamins that you take? Does it do any food intake or does it only like the output?
I don't use it for food, but I think you can put like notifications for medicine.
Okay.
So maybe you could do vitamins,
Like if
but
it knows that I'm taking Lexapro and then it knows the days that I like skip taking Lexapro or whatever, which
yeah,
you
I mean
shouldn't do.
that's the kind of thing that like to me is like that is the goal of people in the quantified self movement is to like build the tools that any person could have, right? Like, so if, I mean, you don't have an Apple Watch, but say like I was on Lexapro and I had an Apple Watch, and even if the health app doesn't give me the power to enter when I'm taking Lexapro or not, and I want to
Mhm.
know how it deals with my sleep in a quantified way, like there should be a tool for me to be able to do that.
Do that
Like, if,
manually, yeah.
yeah, like if my health, like if I have so much data on my sleep and I can input data about other factors in my life, like it should be easy for me to see how those things correlate and like
Hmm.
have ownership over that information.
Yeah. That I think that, and this is more of a discussion about like these apps, what it would be great if these apps could do. Like I think that there should be like a baseline, like it takes your resting heart rate, it takes like all that other stuff. And then you can like decide if you want to also log all this other stuff instead of like it prompting you to be like, put in your food, put in your da da da. And like food specifically is so extra super duper complicated. And we're gonna dedicate a whole episode to logging like food in this kind of like personalized data way. So it's not something that we want to skip over because it's just too big for this episode. But yeah, I think that that's so crazy that the health app was just like, you're a lazy bitch. Like it's not
I
saying that, but
know.
essentially it was saying that when you're like, I literally have COVID. And then the gentler streak app is like, babe, like, please take a rest. Like, you're sick. Stop. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
No, it was literally wild to me. Like, I had COVID, like, my body was changing in so many ways. And so they're
Uh-huh.
called like trends in your health. There
Uh-huh.
were several trends in my health. And the
Uh-huh.
one that it chose to display to me was that I had been walking and moving less.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you
Yeah.
kidding?
I
Like,
think that that's Apple being like, we get blamed for the sedentary life a little bit and then
Interesting.
being like, well, I mean, we'll just make sure we're telling people to get up and move.
Yeah. And it would be one thing if I had programmed in like, hey, Apple, just give me a nudge if like,
Hmm.
I'm entering some kind of like moment in my life where I'm unintentionally moving less. And that's just something I want to be aware of if it's
Hmm.
happening, right? But I never opted into any notification like that.
Yeah, I
It
don't
really
know who
stung.
would. It's
Yeah.
annoying. Joanna and I
Yeah.
were talking about the like close your circles thing the other day, because I've been reading this really interesting book about, I'll talk about it more later, but there's this book that talks about like the extension of the self through technology and like our phone is like becoming, part of our, not actually part of our bodies, but like it's an extension of our bodies. It's a tool that we often have on ourselves. And then the Apple Watch or the Fitbit or whatever is like even more so integrated with our bodies. And then there's this whole idea of like the modern like cyborg, and we're inching towards this like total, dependence on our technology to, inform our routines, to inform how we understand ourselves and experience life with other people, And what Joanna and I were talking about is like with the Apple Watch specifically, it like has also managed to like change our language in these kinds of ways. Like um people I've heard, and honestly, it's usually like my mom's friends being like, I have to close my circles, or like I have to, like, I like look like the outside one is done, like time to like do the inside one, or the opposite. I don't know how it works, but like it is also like changing the way that we talk about exercise, and the way, not just literally like, I 20 years ago I have to close my circles, no one would know what that meant. But also like, so there's that literal like change in language, and then there's this other, you know goal, like daily goal setting, that is
Mhm.
not just like the Jane Fonda video that like you're supposed to pop into your VHS and do, but it's also the thing that is on your body telling you what to do all the time, which like you can turn off. But the setting is like the baseline setting is to remind you, when you're not moving. And I would feel really fucking annoyed if I had COVID and my phone was telling me to get up. Like you
Yeah.
already feel bad. Like there's already, I think, like guilt, and at least for me, like I feel bad when I'm sick. I'm like, oh, I should be doing something else, but here I am being sick.
Yeah.
Like bitch, hate it.
Yeah. I think the way I think about it is like any way that these technologies allow us or enable us to think less and like be less in touch with our health and our body's needs is bad. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the goals, the prescribed goals, is a really good example of that. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
every day you're just going to close your rings and you're not thinking about, like, oh, I'm tired today, or oh, I would like to push myself today. If you just have like this baseline goal that you do because the user interface tells you to, I don't think that's great for us.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if that's motivating for you, or if it helps you critically think about your goals and set new goals and push yourself in new ways in a healthy way, like I think that's good. But yeah, I totally agree that like a lot of data and the obsession is also this tendency to let the app make all the decisions for you, which I don't think is healthy for us.
Mm-hmm.
I can also get into a little bit of so that was most of my pros. I can talk about the exploitation of data and data privacy cons.
Love to hear that.
One of the interesting ones that I didn't, another thing that I didn't think about when I was starting to research this, but I am subject to, is okay, so yes, we know there's like a lot of exploitation and data privacy issues here. One
Mm-hmm.
of the prominent ones is self-tracking pushed and forced by employers onto employees in certain workplace environments. So this is something that my work does. It's an incentive program. So I get money by connecting my fitness data to, this like portal.
So
But
weird.
it is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know how they're using it. I just know that, every once in a while it'll get some extra money. But yeah, that's creepy. Um,
I thought you were going to talk about the mouse thing, which
what
is
mouse
different.
thing?
It's like so many like corporate jobs, like remote jobs, have some kind of
Oh,
thing on the work computer where they like know if your mouse isn't moving while you're
yeah.
working, which is stupid because like maybe you're reading something. I don't know.
Yeah, that shit is dumb.
But that's not about health.
Yeah.
That's yeah,
But it
yours
is
is
tracking
arguably weirder.
and
Yeah.
is surveillance.
Yeah.
Um, So, and there's also, so not just employers to employees, but health and life insurance companies, health insurance, right? They're a huge bank of people who are interested in this kind of data. Substance addiction programs have, been using this kind of data to monitor the activities of the subject and analyze data in order to understand if they, what they're doing. And the data gathered by these companies can be accessed by commercial, government, and research marketing agencies. So one thing that I am a little bit murky about, and again, like since these are all like Apple's a company, Google, which owns Fitbit now, is a company. A lot of like they have user privacy and user data statements, but I think a lot of also like when I ask the question, what does Google do with my Fitbit data or what does Apple do with my data? A lot of times they just don't really tell you because it's a private
Hmm.
company and they own your data and maybe they don't want to say how much money they make off of it. But
Hmm.
one thing that I thought was kind of interesting in 2015, Google was a HIPAA compliant company. So HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And it's kind of like it's thrown around a lot. I feel like in everyday language of like when people talk about um, how you can or can't disclose personal medical information, right? People are like HIPAA violation, but really like HIPAA is a set of rules that like mean certain things. There's in a article from Wired, there was a quote by a research analyst at Juniper Research talking about the acquisition of Fitbit by Google. And they kind of described, moving away from Fitbit was bought, but Google isn't necessarily having to be HIPAA compliant anymore. Any large scale data collection that would be similar to Google's ad data platform, right? Any way that collecting data in the same way that Google collects data for their ads would jeopardize Fitbit's existing corporate wellness business. So Google would not be allowed to collect your personal data in the same way because it's health data. But it's also important to note that like location data that is collected when you go on a run is not personal health data.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other data that these wearables collect that don't count as personal health data that they can use for, just anything. When Roe versus Wade was overturned in
You
2022,
returned.
overturned when Roe versus Wade was overturned in 2022, there were a lot of questions about how data from wearables and, that we just input exactly what you were saying earlier, Christina, about
Hmm.
like tracking your period, um, that people put on their phones, how that might be available or could be used by law enforcement because Apple does allow law enforcement to access users' data in that way.
Hmm.
I have heard of a couple like murder cases where Apple Watch movement data, or not Apple Watch movement data, but even like your phone, Apple
Hmm.
iPhone movement data is used to confirm or deny an alibi, right? People
Hmm.
could say they were asleep, but if their phone shows that they were moving about or their Apple Watch shows that they were having a really high heart rate, maybe they know that they were stabbing people.
You have got to be so fucking stupid to wear your Apple Watch while you're murdering somebody.
Okay, but here's the other thing, Christina, is that, and we'll get into the true crime later. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. You guys, this season has everything.
This season has everything.
This season has everything. It sounds like
But
I'm like it sounds so like triggering. Like we're gonna talk about murder. We're gonna talk about food tracking.
Well, I mean, it's the self, right?
We're
Like
talking about the
we are
self, you
triggering
guys.
ourselves by making this podcast this season.
Yeah, no, we're actually going to be really vulnerable.
Yeah.
So you're
But
welcome.
the thing about that is that if you had no heart rate data for that time, then people would be able to say that you just took your watch off and stabbed people.
Could you get someone else to wear it?
You could, but then
I would
maybe they would
strap that
say,
thing to my cat.
then they would say this heart rate resembles that of a cat.
I'd be
I don't
like,
know.
I
I
was
think
just
the solution is just
sleeping.
not to go out and stab people.
Or to not have an Apple Watch.
That's true. Yeah, I think the point I come to at the end is sort of the same as what you were saying earlier, Christina, about this idea of post-humanism, right? Like, what do we lose by reducing our health and exercise experiences to all this data and numbers? What do we gain? I think for me, I don't have the perfect idea of a balance, but I think that there are a lot of cool things that you can do, but I think it's just something that we have to be on the lookout for. Oh, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't mention that on top of like even if Apple was like not using your data for anything nefarious, you have to be aware that like people could like there's hacks all the time so that like just because your data is protected by a user agreement doesn't mean that like it's not going to be accessed by anyone ever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's still out there and could be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that there are interesting things about like this N of one experiments and how, the quantified self, right, puts decisions about health and knowledge about health into the hands of people that we might not have ever had before. But I do think that it really has to be balanced with, the corporate interest. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like, it is in a way, this strange catch-22 in which you are more in control of your health than ever because you can log it and track it in these like smart ways that are, and then you get presented this data. But you're also not because you can't necessarily control that presentation. I mean, just based off of the Apple health anecdote versus the gentle streak one. And you also, it's not private. Like it is, and it's not. And there's, especially with this TikTok thing that's happening, like this conversation about like, well, what about the layman's data? Like, what do I really have to fear about TikTok having my data? And I feel like the US government has been saying all this stuff about like spies and military recruitment or like pushing the communist agenda or blah blah blah, and like the US military is in fact the entity, the institution using TikTok to recruit. But again, we'll get to that later this season. But and like the fear around that is xenophobic, really, because like it's taking our data in the way that all of these American companies are. But as soon as it's not American made, we put all of these like dangers around it. When the dangers are in American made companies and in TikTok, the fact that like the more information that an institution or a corporation or a person has about you, the more informed they are to manipulate what you do, like they know where you go, they know what you look at, they presumably know what you look like, most likely if you turn on your camera ever on your phone, which you do. And so they can like start, and I talked about this mostly in season 1, but like they can get you to buy things, and that's the thing. And they can put your attention to things, and those are the dangers, at least for the layman, to me, is like you become like manipulated to spend your money on time on things that you wouldn't otherwise have. We see that with like the 2016 election, like polarization on Facebook. There's, if you've ever bought something online that then sucked and then you only bought it because you saw someone else have it, there's also these like the dangers of jealousy, and teen girls have like statistically, and I'll try to find the actual like article I'm thinking of, like never been more depressed. Like this is like the time where teenagers are like going on fewer dates, they're having less sex, And like those aren't necessarily bad things, I guess, but like there's less human connection than ever. And those are the dangers. It's not that like the Chinese spy balloon will like somehow sprout from your phone, or like you will, I don't know, become like un-American in some way. Like that's not the issue. That's all. Those are the
Right.
dangers. But also, it's hard to see that against I'm sleeping so great every night. Like it feels like a more tangible, like I'm using this tool now to like give me something. And maybe it's like taking my attention in these other ways, but like, damn, I'm sleeping really well because now I can track it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you think about like harms and benefits, to me, like being served ads by Google, like even if they're personalized, I care about that way less. Like to me, that
Mm-hmm.
system is way more harmful to me than beneficial, as opposed to, for me, the health tracking machine, right? Like I actually do like looking at that information
Mm-hmm.
and having that data. So for me, I can see how it has more of a benefit than a harm.
And also, like, the benefits feel more like you get a tangible reward for it. And you're
Mhm.
more aware of, like, I enjoy engaging with this app and I enjoy, like, logging my thing and I enjoy having better sleep and all this stuff versus, like, I'm maybe not consciously aware of all of the things getting thrown at me that are changing my behavior. But with the
Mhm.
health app, I am active in that. And that's a very different thing, but the data collection is the same.
Mhm.
The modes are
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
and the presentation is different. But you're still like offering your information to this like faceless entity. And one of them is like manipulating us in a way that we kind of know about but kind of don't know about, and then the other one like we are using to our benefit, which would be the health apps that we actually like manually put our stuff into. um and so yeah, like I mean, I used to like have a period tracker app. I'm really bad at like actually using them. I'm so bad at doing like the daily activity of logging something. I can't do. I would never be able to do it. So it's just not something that like for me I think is plausible to like see if I enjoy. I don't know where I'm going with this anymore.
I think that, for people who do have a doctor and find it hard to talk to their doctor, feel like their
Mm-hmm.
doctor doesn't listen to them, these kinds of things can be an interesting way to start a new dialogue with your doctor if
Yeah.
they, you know, because I think it could also be telling if you are really informed about your health and interested in improving your health and have, you know, experimented with some of these kinds of experimentations, and your doctor doesn't believe you or doesn't listen to you because you don't have um, a medical degree. I don't know if that, I mean, that's probably not something that every doctor does, but I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine that um, this is something that, medical professionals, just my experience with doctors, maybe don't always listen to people, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I'm going with that either.
Yeah, I know. And like it's not a replacement for a doctor,
Mhm.
but in a country in which it's really hard to get health insurance and like maintain it, or it's like it's just a precarious thing. I can see how some people would opt to do that in the
Mhm.
current state of healthcare. However, I don't believe that it is the same thing as going to see like specialists. I'm never going to say that that's the same thing. Just like this is not a saying we're also like never prescriptive anyway. Like we're not trying to tell anyone to do anything. It's just more
Yeah,
like an investigation into the thing. But
yeah.
I
This
think
actually, PSA, this was viral Apple Watch marketing.
this has been sponsored by this would be the
And use our
worst.
discount code.
Ugh, I wish. Our discount code is as if 123. Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe the show. That's the end. Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think? Great.
Yeah,
I was I learned out so much from this episode.
me too.
I can't believe that person had on Reddit who like just posted their whole sleep experiment life. Well, we're gonna post that on the IG because I think it's really interesting and really funny that it's like boyfriend sleeps worse with partner, girlfriend sleeps better with
I
partner.
know. The comments on it were so funny. Like people were like, I can infer from this that your girlfriend is like just a fireball and you are an ice cube and like different things like that. It's
I thought
really
you were gonna
fun.
say your girlfriend is anxiously attached.
No, no, it was not anything like that. It was just like, wow, like I can tell like you need a cool room, and so you sleep worse when your girlfriend's next to you, but she
Mm,
needs it warm, so she likes you there,
hmm.
like those kind of things.
Yeah, the temperature debate, the great temperature debate.
Yeah, just get two duvets.
Joanna famously loves a very cold room to sleep in.
Yeah, I do.
I think a lot of people do though.
I think it's like I think if anything, colder is better for your sleep, like by science.
Yeah, sciencely.
Yeah, according to the scientists.
I when I had COVID, the reason I knew that I did, because I usually keep my apartment. I usually like don't have the air on, but when I do, it's at 70. And I had like just gotten back from teaching and I had worn a mask because I like felt really shitty and I had just been traveling. And then I was like walking around my living room and I just got like struck by feeling so freezing and I was shivering. And I was like, oh no, it's happening because I know that my apartment's like pretty warm. It's 70 degrees in here. And then I had a fever of like 101.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Then
Wow.
I went up and then I went down, da da da. But I learned that your resting temperature changes when you're sick. Like your body's like, no, it has to be hotter in here. It has to be hotter in here. And so your body's like, is cold. It feels colder because it's supposed to be hotter. Even so, like you on the inside, you're really hot, but on the outside, you're like trying to get that hot. You know what I mean?
Or
I'm not
like
saying
it's
this super well.
taking heat, like it's spending more energy to heat your inside than it is to
Yeah,
heat
to
your
fight the
outside.
virus or whatever than it is. And so then you're like, your body is just thrown off essentially. And it knows that your outside is colder than your inside wants it to be. And then you shiver.
Homeostasis.
Homeostasis.
That's what I'll name my kid.
Polyphene and homeostasis.
Yeah.
Two little scientists.
Yeah.
Two doctors.
And also Christopher Schmid.
For sure. There was a little kid in the store I work in the other day named Christina, which is my name. And I was like, it's so funny that I was a toddler named Christina. Like, that's a really long name to name a little baby. Or like
Hmm.
just thinking, I feel like Joanna is like Jojo, Joji, da da da. But my parents never called me a nickname. They always called me Christina. So
Yeah,
like
that
you're
is
calling a
perfect.
baby a name like that? That's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could you change Christina's diaper? Can't she do it herself?
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to turn this off.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Obsessed. What's it? What's
Quantified self.
join the movement or don't? I'm anti the movement. Joanna's pro the movement.
I'm starting the movement Quantified Selfie.
Quantified selfie. Quantum selfie. That's our band name. Okay. Thanks for joining us. Please follow me on Instagram. XTINAMMM. Maybe just MM. Maybe 3Ms. I can't remember. Joanna has an Instagram in theory called Data Tutorials that she never goes on. We have a very active Instagram that I fully run and pretend it's the two of us, but it's only me. And it's called, and I write little diaries from Joanna about how much she loves me. Just kidding.
Is it really pretending if everyone can tell that it's just you?
I don't know. That's at How We Live Online. And we have a Twitter that doesn't do much, but you could follow it. And please send this episode to someone who you think would be interested in it. Or if you have a friend who's like obsessed with their fucking Apple Watch, send them this episode because they need to hear about it.
You do.
And they should get that app that Joanna has that's better than the health app.
Yeah, Gentler Streak.
Gentler. That's
Aw.
the name of my kid. That was my
My
nickname
kid
in high
is
school.
Streak. My nickname
Gentler.
was Streak.
My nickname was Gentler Stroke. about to say it. I've been thinking it this entire time.
Are you kidding?